The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Fantasy. Sign up with the SGPN. Get 50% deposit bonus of $1,000. That's about the Edge Boost. It's $750 per month on your sports gambling transactions. Got EdgeBoost.bet, promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm, the leading data from picks and props. Try it out for free for a week by going to sports.com, RITHMM. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Game Podcast from the Sports Game Podcast Network. It is currently Wednesday night, February 19th, roughly 9:45 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Scott Reichel, once again, going solo for this pod. There are two events going on. We have Doha and we have Rio. However, Rio is actually going to be having the quarterfinals on Friday. So instead, we're going to be doing Doha only for this episode. So if you're looking for a breakdown of a ton of matches, instead we have four that we're going to cover in this one, taking place either Thursday morning or Thursday afternoon, depending on, of course, what time zone you were in. Either way, before we get into the actual preview of the quarterfinals and the recap of the round of 16, do want to remind you once again that you can't just support for the show, but like subscribing to YouTube reminder. You can also leave a rating and a review on Spotify or Apple. So once again, you can't just support for the show, whether you are listening to it live stream format, either on YouTube, on Twitter. You know what I'm trying to say. You can still show support by leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. I think we're at 780. Once again, was aiming for 800 by the end of February. Hopefully, can help us get there by the end of the month. And reminder, don't forget to rate or review the podcast on Spotify or Apple if you do listen to the podcast audio version only. Plus, reminder, check out the merch store on the SGPN website. We have a lot of great Tennis Game Podcast merch with sweatshirts, t-shirts, and mugs. All high quality, all affordable. Recommend getting yourself something. So once again, check out the merch store, not just for tennis show, but for the other shows with the network as well. A lot of them do have merch. And plus, reminder, for the actual network, if you do want to find free daily picks on college basketball, NBA, college baseball, NHL, and more, download the SGPN app. Free in the App Store. If you're tired of seeing dub club nonsense on your actual timeline and you want actual picks for free, check out the SGPN app because we do give out picks for free on there every single day. Anyway, starting off with the actual recap of what happened last episode for the Lock and Dog picks. Overall, decent episode, not great, but fine. For the lock, we ended up losing. Wojciechowicz minus 2.5 games against DeZumer at minus 126. He got his ass kicked, simply put. I believe DeZumer never got broken in the entire match, which is pretty embarrassing because it's on clay, and DeZumer is not a good server. But Lajovic kind of no-showed, and you ended up seeing DeZumer play very well. So either way, Lajovic ended up picking up a loss outright on that one in straight sets, and not even close. Bright side, though, for the dog, nice win, as we had the prop play, had Griekspoor and Struff over half a tie break in the match at plus 110, and coincidentally, the match ended in straight sets, and each set went to a tie break. So never in doubt there. You once again ended up seeing a bunch of holds, because Griekspoor has been a tiebreak machine recently. He also had two tiebreaks against Berrettini in the match on Wednesday. So either way, point is plus 110 was a crazy price, and we cashed easily as both guys really had a hard time returning. So nice win there for the dog. Plus for the, I'd say, side note on the actual Griekspoor and Struff match, I actually did bet each of the first two sets to go to a tiebreak at 15-1. And I have that parlayed with Munar to win Rio. And if that wins, I turn $35 into 10 grand. So I'm halfway through to 10 grand. Hopefully Munar gets it done. We'll see what happens. But either way, point is I do have some life. And it was 15-1. Crazy price on each of the first two sets in that match to go to a tiebreak. And a reminder for future matches, keep an eye on Griekspoor tiebreaks. That's been a very solid angle for a couple of weeks. I recommend looking at that in the future. Anyways, getting into the actual recap of what happened in Doha, we're going to skip over the recap of Rio because we're not going to talk about that event in this episode. So looking at the actual matches that we end up seeing in the round of 16, overall, I'd say it was mostly straightforward, but a couple of random, I'd say, twists and turns. So Alcaraz was coasting against Nardi, and then he fell apart in the second set. Then he dominated the third. So Alcaraz actually did lose a set to Nardi and ended up winning in 3. Saw Lehecka destroy Morozin in straight sets. Saw Berrettini beat Griekspoor in probably the match of the day. You had alternating tie breaks followed by a 6-4. I'd say Berrettini, though, was a bit fortunate. Griekspoor hurt his foot in the second set. Wasn't exactly moving as well as he was earlier in the match, and eventually he did get the break, and he ended up holding to win the third set in the match. Draper killed O'Connell in that matchup. You saw Medjedovic, who won on one leg at the end of the Tsitsipas match in the first round, ended up winning, but then could not continue, as Felix got the victory there via walkover. So Medvedev ended up beating Bergs in straight sets, pretty convincing fashion. So Rublev beat Borges in straight sets, convincing as well, and DeZumer beat De Minaur ended up beating Dzanchulp in straight sets as well. So overall, once again, pretty straightforward. Looking at the actual matchups, Djokovic losing in the first round to Berrettini was the main, I'd say, shock of the event. But besides that, pretty straightforward for the actual matchup so far. And as a result, we have a pretty, I'd say, fun collection of quarterfinal matches in Doha on Thursday. Want to briefly dive into, though, the actual quarter outrights that we ended up having for Doha as a reminder. For the first quarter, we had Alcaraz minus 200. Of course, he's still here, so not really complaining. Didn't have anybody else. We didn't actually bet Alcaraz minus 200, but it was the only guy I wanted in that quarter, and he's now in the quarterfinals. So we have one outright alive there for the first quarter. Second quarter, we had the winner of the Draper and Papiron match. We ended up fading Djokovic. Had Draper at 3-1 and Papiron at 11-1. Draper did win, and he ended up advancing into the quarters after beating O'Connell in the round of 16. So we have a minus 140 favorite, give or take, at plus 300 to win the second quarter as well. For the third quarter, we have Felix at 3-1 and Tsitsipas at 6-1. Tsitsipas, of course, lost to Medjedovic, pretty embarrassing fashion. Felix, though, is still here as he ended up getting the win via walkover against Medjedovic. And as a result, we have Felix at 3-1 as well for the third quarter. For the fourth quarter, though, we had two options. We had Humbert 6-1 and de Minaur at 135. Humbert dropped out, so we got our money back there via void. And we have de Minaur as the minus 140 favorite, give or take, in that match against Rublev taking place on Thursday. So going through the outrights once again for the quarters, we have somebody alive in every single quarter. So hopefully we end up sweeping all four quarters of the outrights. We have Alcaraz, we have Draper, we have Felix, and of course we also have de Minaur. For the actual outrights to win the event, we have Alcaraz, who's alive, de Minaur is alive, and Humbert dropped out, so we ended up getting a refund on that one. So overall, so far, knock on wood, a good event for us on the outrights, and hopefully we'll keep rolling there on Thursday for those matches. Anyway, time to get into the actual preview of the quarterfinal matches taking place in Doha on Thursday. For that, though, I want to remember once again that we are brought to you by Edge Boost, because Edge Boost has partnered up with SGPN, the premier Visa debit card for bettors. Edge Boost card allows you the ability to avoid the hassle of having your card denied at the sportsbook, DFS site, sweepstakes site, racetrack, and casino. Remind you to also earn cashback rewards up to $50 per month by using the Edge Boost card. Your money is also safe as the card is FDIC insured, and best part, no credit checks, and it's completely free to use. A reminder, sign up today, use promo code SGPN to get instant tier 2 status and better cashback rewards. Once again, edgeboost.bet, promo code SGPN, edgeboost.bet, promo code SGPN. We're also about to buy MyBookie. MyBookie was with SGPN from the very beginning, and they are back with us. It's the place to bet on every sport, props in every game, and the live door casino. They also accept customers a ton of locations, easily deposit and get lighty fast payouts with crypto when you actually withdraw your winnings. And a reminder, you can also head to mybookie.ag, promo code SGPN for a great sign-up bonus. Once again, 100% deposit match up to $1,000 and a $10 casino chip. MyBookie.ag, promo code SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished recapping what happened in the matches in the round of 16 in Doha. Time to move on into the actual preview of the quarterfinal matches taking place on Thursday. Starting off with the first match on the card, you have de Minaur taking on Rublev. De Minaur is minus 145. Rublev is plus 125. For the spread, minus 1.5 for de Minaur. You have plus 1.5 for Rublev. The over-under in games is set at 22.5. For the set to over-under, you have around plus 135 on the over. And as for the set spread here, you have de Minaur in straight sets at plus 170. Rublev in straight sets at plus 275. So going through the head-to-head history, it's been very competitive. It's currently in favor of de Minaur 4-3. So it is neck and neck. Faced off last year in Rotterdam, most recent meeting on hard court, and you saw de Minaur end up beating Rublev in 3. However, faced off in the Australian Open that same year, last year, and you saw Rublev win 6-0 in the 5th set. So faced off twice last year. It was a split, but de Minaur did win the most recent meeting. So the point is you have seen a lot of competitive matchups. In fact, every single head-to-head meeting, except for one, has not ended in straight sets. So expect a marathon here. Of course, you have different play styles. You have de Minaur, who's more of a rallier. You have Rublev, who's more of a firepower guy. But Rublev has looked very good. Beat Bublik and beat Borges 6-3, 6-4. And you're looking at de Minaur. He's been good too. Beat Safon in straight sets and beat the Zanschulp in straight sets. Now, for the actual, I'd say, takeaways that I have for the event so far, the court's been playing pretty fast. It's why you've seen a lot of tie breaks in the event, which would benefit Rublev. However, the problem is Rublev is still, I'd say, mentally unstable at times. He has been trying to work on that aspect of his game. I think he's done a better job this year, but he still had a couple of flare-ups here or there with his temper. And de Minaur, we know, is pretty, I'd say, even keel. And I do think if this match goes distance, de Minaur can extract enough errors to cause Rublev to self-destruct. Now, for the actual value, do I think there's much value on de Minaur minus 145? Not really. I don't think that it's a price I'd want to lay. Of course, we don't have to because we have de Minaur winning the quarter at plus 135. So we already have this at plus money. Do I think that Rublev is going to win this match? I think it's very close. Andrew asking if it's worth hedging. To be honest, it depends on how many of the quarters actually backed with me. If it's one of the only quarter bets you have, you can consider it, but I feel like it's once again a toss-up match. So if you want to go for Rublev and basically secure a very minimal amount of profit, you can. I'm not going to. I'll probably just let it ride, maybe in play if you find a better price. If I find Rublev mid-match at like 2-1, maybe I'll consider it. But at this current price of like plus 125, I think that's a pass for me. Not really interested in that one. Once again, you can kind of go about it however you want to, since it is, of course, your own money. But I think I'll let it ride for this one. de Minaur, I think, once again, I would pick to win because I do think he's more reliable than Rublev at this stage in their careers, just based on how much of a downswing Rublev has had over the last year or so, where de Minaur has kind of been a top 10 caliber player. So I would probably let it ride, but I think it'll be close. I like the over in this one. I see a marathon once again. Give me the over in games. Give me the over in sets. If you want to go for the team total on Rublev or de Minaur, 12.5, give or take, or 12. I don't mind that. I think you're going to see a pretty fun overall competitive match. So give me a de Minaur as a, say, small opinion on, but I feel better about the total. Give me the over and the over 2.5 sets in that one. Moving on to the Medvedev and Felix match. You have Felix, who is a pretty decent dog, actually. Medvedev's minus 205. You have Felix at plus 175. For the spread, you have minus 3 for Medvedev, plus 3 for Felix. You can also find 2.5 if you want to at minus 130 on Medvedev. For the over-under in games, you have 22.5. For the set spread here, you have Medvedev in straight sets at plus 135. Felix to win a set is minus 165. The over 2.5 sets is plus 145. Now, for the actual head-to-head history, this is why Medvedev is a massive favorite. It is because he's owned Felix over their careers. Medvedev is 7-1 against Felix in their respective careers. And looking at the most recent meeting, Felix did win, but it was the Olympic clay season. So you ended up seeing Felix win on clay, which was Medvedev's worst surface. Every hardcourt meeting, though, Medvedev has won. So that is why Felix is a pretty decent-sized dog in this one. In fact, that was the only clay meeting they ever had. All 7 previous meetings, which Medvedev did win, were on hard court. Now, the issue that you run into for Medvedev, he's been good in the event, kinda. Beat Bergs handily 6-2, 6-1 in the match on Wednesday. However, did have a war against Khachanov, who was in really bad form the previous tournament. So a bit skeptical about Medvedev's going to perform. We've seen him underachieve over the course of the last year and a half, especially this season. He has not looked too great. Now, for Felix, he's been great. Won 2 events this season, already on hard court. Ended up beating Hallis in a marathon in 3, but ended up having a walkover in the next round against Medvedev. So for the actual match, I understand why Medvedev is favored by a decent amount because of head-to-head. However, he has been just unbackable for me. I can't back Medvedev. I don't trust him. Felix isn't playing great tennis, the best tennis he's played in probably a year or two, just based on how well he's played so far this season, winning 2 titles already, and we're only in February. So give me Felix for the value. I don't mind the plus 3. That you might see a marathon as well unfold here. Medvedev, though, has really not had a great second serve, and yes, he did end up burying Bergs in the most recent matchup, but I'm not impressed by him having a marathon against bad form Khachanov and him losing to Medvedev handily in that semifinal match there in Marseille. I think I'm going to go with Felix for the value. Give him the plus 3 on that one. I don't mind the over as well. If you want to go Felix team total over at like 12 or 11.5, I don't mind that either. But I think that Felix has value in this one. I understand Medvedev has owned him mentally over the course of their careers, but hopefully Felix winning the most recent meeting, yes, on a different surface, but still, I'm hoping Felix, once he broke the seal and did beat Medvedev once, I'm hoping that that's enough confidence he needs to actually get the job done again here on hard court. But give me a competitive matchup here, and I will go with Felix to keep it close and to cover this overall number. Moving on to the next matchup, you have Alcaraz against Lehecka. Now, for this one, Alcaraz, massive favorite, obviously. He's minus 420. For Lehecka, he's plus 340. For the spread, minus 4 for Alcaraz, plus 4 for Lehecka. You can find 3.5, so if you shop around. For the over-under, you have 22 games here. For the set spread, Alcaraz in straight sets is minus 145. You have Lehecka to win a set at plus 115. The over 2.5 sets is plus 180. Now, they faced off one time before, faced off in 2023 on grass, and Alcaraz did win 6-2, 6-3. Been fine in the event so far. Not great, to be honest. Won the title in Rotterdam, but was unimpressive based on, I'd say, margin against de Minaur and Hurkacz, so he was a bit vulnerable in that event, but still won the title. Faced off against Cilic, who had not played for a while. That was actually competitive, as he ended up winning 6-4, 6-4. And he beat Nardi, was cruising to a straight set win, then fell apart. So either way, ended up getting the job done in the third set, but still Alcaraz has not won in straight sets in 3 of his last 4 matches. As for Lehecka, post-injury that he suffered in Rotterdam against Hurkacz, he's been great. Beat Dimitrov in straight sets and beat Morozin in straight sets. So for the value, I actually don't mind Lehecka plus the games here. I think that 4 games a lot. I've mentioned before, Alcaraz has been winning, but not comfortably. And I think that Lehecka is in great form. I think Lehecka has looked good in the event so far. Alcaraz hasn't played anybody worth a damn, and he has not been that impressive. He did not cover 4 against Cilic, who's well past his prime. Did not cover, did he actually cover this number? He did cover it against Nardi, but he went to 3 sets against Nardi. So I think Lehecka is in great form. I think that he's a good server. I think that his forehand can give Alcaraz problems. The fast-paced courts will benefit Lehecka as well. I'm going to take the games here. I think Alcaraz will win the match, but do I think he'll be dominant? No. I think that Lehecka can keep it interesting. So based on current form and based on what I've seen with the eye test from Alcaraz in the event, not worthy of laying 4 in this spot against a pretty underrated opponent in Lehecka. Give me the games here for this one. Moving on to the last match on the slate, you have Draper against Berrettini. Draper's minus 140, give or take. Berrettini's around plus 120. For the spread, you have minus a half or minus 1 for Draper. You have plus a half or plus 1 for Berrettini. For the over-under, you have around 24.5 games. For the set spread, you have Draper in straight sets at plus 200. You have Berrettini in straight sets at plus 300. The over 2.5 sets is around plus 125. Now for that, Ted, I actually faced off last year on grass, and you ended up seeing Draper win in Stuttgart in 3. Competitive, lost the first set, came back and won. So you're looking at the overall form of Berrettini. That's been the main question mark for him over the last couple of years with his overall fitness and his form. And Berrettini has looked very good in the event. Probably his best run since the clay slate last year, where he won back-to-back titles. Now, Berrettini has been involved in a couple of competitive matchups. Beat Djokovic for the first time in his career. Great showing by him. Djokovic, though, first match back from the injury suffered in the Australian Open. I wonder if he was fully 100%, but Berrettini played well. Credit where credit is due. Then he had a marathon against Griekspoor, where he ended up winning the first set in a tiebreak. Lost the second set in a tiebreak, but won the third set 6-4. Said before, Griekspoor got injured, hurt his foot midway through the second set, and I do think that might have helped him. But Berrettini has been thriving with the fast-paced courts here in Doha. Problem is still not a great returner. So you're looking at what should be a pretty interesting matchup with 2 different styles. Draper's more of a rallier. Berrettini wants to end points quickly with the monster forehand. Draper, though, has had a very easy path. Beat Papiron in straight sets and beat O'Connell in straight sets. Been on the court for significantly less time than Berrettini has been over the course of the first 2 rounds in Doha. For this matchup, though, I think I am going to go with Draper in this one. First of all, I think that based on his consistency, I think that he is the more reliable option. And I do think after Berrettini had a borderline 3-hour match, about 2 hours, and let me actually check what it was. I want to say it was 2:30, his match against Griekspoor yesterday. I think it was 2:30. Yeah, it was about 2:27. So he's on the court for a lot of time. For a guy that hasn't exactly played much tennis recently. And I think that you're looking at fatigue could be a potential issue in this one with Draper keeping the ball in play. Draper, I just think, is right now the better player than Berrettini. Yes, I could be completely wrong about this, but I think that having a 3-set marathon the day prior is not great for Berrettini, who's had some durability issues over the last couple of, I'd say, years at this point. Draper, though, has been coasting. He's been great. Made the U.S. Open semis last year. Very good hardcourt player, objectively speaking. I think that minus half a game at minus 120 has a lot of value to it, in my opinion. I'll go with that as my option there, thinking that Berrettini's fitness levels will drop off over the course of what could be a potential 3-set marathon. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for the actual preview of the quarterfinal matches in Doha. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks. For that, though, remember, once again, they're brought to you by Fantasy because they have a great pick'em contest. And a reminder that when you do enter an entry for the pick'em, you can use a bunch of different sports: NBA, NHL, college basketball, tennis, even esports if you want to go for a lineup with that. Reminder, though, you could also use a promo code SGPN to claim special first time buzzer up to 1K bonus cash when you sign up for a new account on Fantasy promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. If you want to try out betting models, will Rhythm help you with that because you can do it 3 ways. You can build your own. You can copy one on the leaderboard, or you can let Rhythm build one for you in seconds. They have college basketball, they have the NBA, they have golf, and once again, a lot of options as well for props in all of those overall sports. Try it out for free for a week, though, using the link, sportscom.com Rhythm, sportscom.com, RTHMM. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Cam Podcast. Finished breaking down the quarterfinals in Doha. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks. For the lock, I actually am going to go with the last match talked about. Based on the spot alone, I think it's a good spot for Draper. Give me Draper minus half a game here at minus 120. Same bet as minus 140 on BetMGM, so I am saving 20 cents by shopping around, which I'll do over time. Caesars went rogue. I'll take the minus 120 before the line moves. Now, Berrettini's played well. Said before, beat Djokovic, beat Griekspoor. Been sharp. However, pretty long match yesterday, and I should say today because it's still Wednesday. I'm concerned that with the immediate turnaround, he will look a bit flat or he will run out of gas. We've seen that be an issue for Berrettini in the past, and Draper has been coasting, beat Papirin and beat O'Connell. Two weaker opponents, I'll admit, but still. Draper is a very solid hardcore player who's had a very, I'd say, short amount of time on court, and I think that if the match goes distance and if Draper can make them, I'd say, rallies long, I think Berrettini eventually will struggle physically as the match progresses, and for that reason, I think that Berrettini will eventually lose and not cover this line. In theory, Berrettini could still win the match with a couple breakers, and if he ends up losing a set 6-3, then he ends up not covering. So Draper can actually cover this line if he wins the match. If he loses the match, for example, 6-3, 6-7, 6-7, wins a set by 3, loses 2 tie breaks, and he still covers. So there is a path to actually get this job done with him losing the match, which I do kind of like. But Draper did beat Berrettini in the meeting last year on grass, which I think is Berrettini's best surface. Of course, he made the Wimbledon final a couple years ago. Good on hard court, good on clay as well. But I think that Berrettini's best surface is grass if I had to pick one. So based on that, I like the fact that Draper's beaten him on his favorite surface, and now they're on hard court, which I think does, I'd say, benefit both guys. But Draper, I think, has the rest advantage or the overall stamina advantage. Good enough for me. Give me Draper minus half a game. At minus 120 is my lock. For my dog, I am going to go back to the first match. Give me the Dimonauer and Rublev war. Give me the over 2.5 sets at plus 135. Both players, different playing styles. Dimonauer is more of a consistent rally ball guy, and you're looking at Rublev is more of a firepower, trying to overpower the opposition. And because of the conflicting styles, we've seen a bunch of marathons because 6 of the 7 career meetings have not ended in straight sets. And a reminder, the head-to-head is currently 4-3 in favor of Dimonauer. It is as close as head-to-heads can come. When they face off against each other. Every match they play is a borderline 50-50. Now, with that being the case, I do like that both guys have played so far in the event. I think that the overall, I'd say, momentum swings should be noticeable over the course of this matchup. And I think you're looking at a good spot for the match to go 3 again, like we've seen so constantly over the course of the previous meetings. Give me the over 2.5 sets at plus 135 as my dog. So once again, the plays here for the quarterfinal matches in Doha, the lock's going to be on Draper, minus half a game at minus 120. That's on Caesars. For the dog, I am going to go with Dimonauer and Rublev over 2.5 sets at plus 135, also on Caesars. That's going to wrap it up for this episode. Remember, back once again, for the semis in Doha, pretty weird to fully break down Rio, though, because they have a lot of night matches, so it comes back down to having a pretty, I'd say, limited amount of time to get the lines out, unless I record at like 3 in the morning. So we'll be back for the semis in Doha, maybe the quarters in Rio. We'll see. Pointers will back once again tomorrow, one way or another. And until next time, find me on Twitter, Reichel Radio. Find me on the NBA show. Find me on the MLB show. Propcast as well. I've been doing MLB Propcast stuff for the season. Don't forget to like, subscribe on YouTube, and a reminder, don't forget to leave a rating and review on Spotify or Apple. Until next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.